What's up, you guys, and welcome to parts 1 through 5 of my making of my Tiefling tail. This is my first time making molds out of liquid silicone, so I tried out a few methods, found out what worked and what didn't, and learned what I will do different in the future. For the interior structure, I used foam tubing, aluminium foil, and lots of tape. The purpose was to bulk up the interior so I didn't have to use so much clay. For the detailed sculpt, I used an oven-baked clay. Monster sculpt clay would also work, but it was a little bit more expensive. I do regret using the foam for the interior as it was a little squishy and made sculpting much more difficult. I gave the sculpt a good spray of mold release to try and prevent the silicone from sticking to the clay. For the silicone mold itself, I used Smooth On Mold Star, which is a 2-part mixture which cures in around 20 minutes. I gave it a couple of coats to try to get both the detail of the sculpt and strength in the mold. Next, I needed to create an outer shell, something rigid to keep everything in place when I cast the tail itself. I tried a plaster pour, and it nearly ended in disaster. You need way more Vaseline than what I used to keep the plaster from sticking to itself. But it holds both sides of the mold, which I cut in half, so it was serving its purpose. And with the tail tip done, next was to do the length of the tail. Following the same steps as before, I used tape and aluminum foil to bulk up the sculpt and cover it in clay. I tried making the tail taper down in size and attempted to give it the shape of tailbones under the skin. My whole goal was realism. I wanted the tail to look and feel like skin. I had to patch in pieces of clay and smooth everything out individually. This is where having the squisher inner structure made things really difficult. So after lots of rolling and squishing and pinching and scraping and scratching and carving, it got to a point where I really liked it. So just as before, I mixed up some silicone for the mold skin and painted it on in a couple of layers. Using Legos, I cast some of the mold silicone into blocks. The tail tip was very flimsy where I cut the mold apart, so I thought having some thicker seams would help align things better. And since silicone sticks to itself very well, I just used some fresh mix to glue everything together and let it cure. I tried using plaster tape this time for the shell, and with the thicker silicone seams, I wouldn't have that sticking issue I had with the first mold. I just soaked some meshy fabric scrap into the plaster and it worked well, but I should have done it in more layers and made it thicker. Now ready to try my first cast, I sprayed down the mold with mold release and then mixed up some dragon skin silicone. I had to color it too, which was fun. I was so excited for the customization possibilities. The mix was a little thin. I know now that there are thickener drops which don't actually speed up the cure time, but make it more workable. I should have cut keys into the thicker seam lines. I had a lot of difficulty getting everything to line up properly when I put the mold back together for the cure. I also should not have sliced the mold completely in half. Silicone is stretchy and can be cast flat and then stuck together later. That would have helped a lot in making things more seamless and even. This project was a failure for many reasons. The cast itself was way too thick and heavy in places. The seams didn't fuse together properly. There was a lot of hollow space inside the mold and everything was very floppy. While I am very sad it didn't come out how I wanted it, it was my first time attempting this skill. I learned a lot from this failure. I learned what not to do and what works, and I have ideas for future attempts to come out better. It may be a little while before I make another attempt, but I still think I can manage what I hope to achieve. You never fail unless you stop trying. Not gonna lie though, I'm still super bummed.